Well, good morning, and for the third time, I think today, happy Mother's Day to the mothers out there. My mom's going to be in the second service, so I'm worried that I'll break down in tears, but I've had the blessing of being raised by a really great mother. This is sometimes joked about, but I also have a great, if she's going to be watching online or whatever, a great mother-in-law who regularly, whenever she visits, makes sure that I'm stocked with my favorite cereal, which I won't divulge to you now. But more important than just bringing me cereal, she had a big part in raising my wife, who, in my opinion, is a spectacular mom to our three kids. Regularly, it's the case where she is going through life with a migraine and doing the kind of motherly duties better than what I would picture myself able to do without a migraine. And so she's a great mom. My daughter, Audrey, who is 8 now, when she was in kindergarten, they had a thing at school that said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And of course, girls, the doctor, or a nurse, or teacher, all the boys wanted to be policemen. I'm not sure what that was all about, but she said she wanted to be a mommy. And I thought that was really cute, and I really hope she does. And then there's Enid, who the jury is still out on her. What on earth is going to happen with that little bugger? I have a good stepmom. I've been surrounded in my life with some really great mothers, and that's been really important to me. But before I continue, I want to be honest for a second and say that I've basically, ever since I took this job, have been dreading the idea of preaching a Sunday on Mother's Day. And there's two big reasons for that. The first is because just because my experience around the idea or the concept of mothers has been pretty healthy, that doesn't mean that a lot of other people aren't. I just wonder what someone sitting here at some point or watching online or whatever, who for all the world they wish they could become a mom and they never were able to. Or they had kids and expected to be a grandma and haven't been able to get there. And there's other issues too. Maybe there's a person who, Mother's Day comes, and while most everybody's celebrating, even in church, and we're going to honor and celebrate this kind of thing, but there's a person who maybe is going to sit all day and expect or hope for the phone call or the visit that's not going to come. And so I realized that in the midst of a joyful day, there's a piece or a group of people that might experience this in a different way. Or another real tangible example is somebody who this is their first year without their mom, who's passed away, and to go through and say, for all my life I've had a mom and now I don't. That can be a real hard thing for people, and so I want to pause and honor that and kind of say that there's a piece of Mother's Day that can be difficult for some people. That's one concern I had about preaching on Mother's Day. Here's the second one. What do I say, right, as a guy up here, to say, to moms, we love you and we want to encourage you, and oh, by the way, here's 143 ways that we need you to do better and to be better mom than you're already being. And it seems kind of odd to me, this idea that on Mother's Day, we talk to moms and say, you need to be a better mom, as if the job of mom is not already challenging enough than to hear some guy up here telling you, how to make it more challenging. And so from my own observations, I've realized that being a mom is a pretty tough job, I think, right? Like there's this thing called giving birth to a child, which no matter how many guys tell me that their kidney stone issue was more challenging than a birthing a live baby. I think the idea of giving birth to a baby is obviously a challenging thing, and I've witnessed it 3 times, and so it's a real deal. Certainly no guy after their kidney stone is passed are going to then wake up with it in the middle of the night and care for it and make sure it's fed and clothed and all these kinds of things. Like that's not going to happen, and so. The deal is that for a mom to give birth and then to make sure a child grows up, safely with, relatively clean clothes on and fed and all these kinds of things. Like that's a pretty big deal, right? That's the big picture of being a mom. But there's also what I've been noticing over the time I've been observing moms in my life is there's kind of more subtle and smaller things that are also part of the gig, right? And so here's an example, a couple examples. If we at our house are going out the door in a rush, trying to get all 3 kids and get out to somewhere we need to be, there's oftentimes this circumstance happens where one child, of course, has one shoe on and the other shoe is missing. And so the child and I will go through the house and we're looking for this other matching shoe with no success. And eventually we say to Mom, you know where this shoe is. And she says, did you check under the bookshelf, hidden in the back corner beside the stuffed possum? I think it's maybe there. And we go and sure enough, like there it is. And it's like, does she have x-ray vision? Like how does she know where all of our stuff is when none of the rest of us can know where just our stuff is, Or here's another example. I try to be a guy who is, involved in things like the dishes and the laundry and that kind of stuff at our house. But if there's anybody out here, and I think this is a mom kind of skill, like a superpower, if there's anybody out here who can take a fitted sheet, if you know what I'm talking about, a fitted sheet, and fold it in a way that resembles something that's folded. Like for me, I get the fitted sheet, and it's like I could roll it up in a ball, or I could fold it, and both times it's the same deal, right? It's exactly the same thing. And so if a mom can talk on the phone, cook dinner, and still fold that fitted sheet, that's a superpower. Here's the third thing is texting. So I don't know about y'all, but for me, I've been trying to branch out. Some of you know this, and try to kind of share some more emojis or some more interesting responses to texts. But for the most part, my responses are like, yes, sure, nope, and mainly thumbs up. Kind of like no matter what you say, boom, here's a thumbs up. My wife, on the other hand, she has there's 20 different versions of emojis that have hearts. And she doesn't just send the same one all the time. It's all these complex things of how does she know exactly which heart emoji to send for the particular situation that requires that kind of heart emoji. And so here's basically what I'm fumbling around trying to say in a bunch of different ways. Is that there's a lot of moms that are out there and they're just killing it. There's plenty of things, pressures of family, of spouses, of work, of all this stuff relating to everybody, serving and helping, all this kind of stuff. So the moms that I'm aware of here at Kish are just killing it, and we want to thank you. And so I'd like to take a second here. If you're a mom, could you, in some way, shape, or form, could you stand up and we could give you a round of applause because we're appreciative of you. There we go. Yep. Very good. Thank you. So, thank you. Here's our plan for the day. If you're a mom and you're here and you already noticed the bulletin insert, you are going to get the day off. Okay? Here's what I literally and actually mean by that. You can tune out of whatever I'm about to say. You have a lot of pressures. You have a lot of things going on in your life. If you need to catch a couple of Z's here, we got no issues from me. If you need to catch up with a couple emoji texts to people, that kind of deal, by all means. Whatever I'm going to say for the next so many minutes is not going to be directed at you. You get the time off. Here's what a few of you I think are thinking in the back of the head. The guys are like, wait a second, I'm definitely coming on Father's Day. I'll be here. I'll be here for sure. We'll have a record crowd of guys coming to church to have the day off on Father's Day. It'll be great. Okay, for the rest of you, if you're a kid, if you're a husband, if you're a spouse, if you have a mom in your life that you want to support, what I'm going to say I hope is helpful to you now. I want to give you two things. I know I'm a pastor, and usually that means 3, but today, 2 things of how to support the moms in your life. And here's the first one. If you want to do more than 2, by all means, but here's 2 for today. The first one is this. Psalm 51, verses 10 to 12 say the following. It says, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from your presence, and take not your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with a willing spirit." So I figure I got a couple of you there because you're thinking, how on earth is he going to take this passage and relate it to how we support the moms in our life? And in order to do that, what we have to do is we have to think about the kind of person, right? What kind of person writes this poem right here? Right, so this is a poem. This is somebody that's gonna write poetry, and your image might be something like this. I'm picturing a guy who's at some kind of odd coffee shop situation, and they're reciting poetry, and maybe they're wearing skinny jeans, and they're like this kind of a person. Maybe you think that's your view of somebody who's a guy who's going to write a poem like this with phrases like "Create in me a clean heart" and "Restore to me the joy of your salvation." Like, who writes that? Meanwhile, I would argue that most of us guys, especially here in rural central Pennsylvania, are brought up in sort of more of a John Wayne kind of independence sort of mindset, right? Like, we're going to be tough and we're going to be brave and we're going to be the kind of guys that you don't see at poetry readings, and we're not wearing skinny jeans. And, when it comes to it, if something's broke, we're going to fix it. And, if the house needs dealt with, we're going to deal with it, and we're going to work hard and these kinds of things. But maybe we're not also going to be writing Psalm 51 poetry. It's interesting because if you think about the context of men's conversations, right? Like, I can give you a few topics, such as shooting animals, catching fish, our work, fixing things, competitive sports. And in most cases, that covers something like 95%, my guess is 95% of men's conversations with each other. And what I want to bring out today is that we need to do better than just that. I think this is exactly why churches, and I don't know if you guys know this statistic or not, but churches are generally kind of inhabited by about 60% women and 40% guys. 60% women and 40% guys. And I think part of that is because guys are uncomfortable with emotional depth and emotional kind of language and stuff in our lives. The guy, the one who wrote Psalm 51, in case you didn't know this, was King David, right? David. So he wrote most of the poetry in the book of Psalms. And you have to imagine that this person, as a kid, used a slingshot, threw a rock at a giant. It knocked him down. He went up, he took the giant's sword, Goliath's sword, and he chopped his head off. So I'm not saying, please don't hear me say, guys don't need to be brave, guys don't need to be strong, we don't need to stand up for what's right, we don't need all that. I'm not saying that in one bit. In fact, I'd considerably take that over the idea of just apathy. I could care less about anything. Definitely take that. However, David didn't just stop at that, because he also was amazingly emotionally available, and he wrote all this poetry in the book of Psalms that we have. I would say the same thing was absolutely true about Jesus. So I think we often culturally and in religious circles, we get a very wrong view of Jesus, and I've said this before, but I have to repeat it because it's so important. A very wrong view of Jesus that sees him as some kind of weak, pushover kind of a person that couldn't stop himself from going to the cross if he wanted to. It's not it at all. In fact, what we find in Jesus is a person who openly wept. He openly wept whenever his friend Lazarus died. He's going to share some of the most kind of emotionally intimate language in his teachings. And then he's also going to have the courage, and believe me when I say this, Jesus himself had entirely more bravery and courage than all the guys in here put together. It's absolutely the case. And if you don't believe that, then you just have the wrong view of Jesus. I don't know who you're worshiping, but it's not the one in the Bible. So the first thing I think we need to do to support moms is this. I think guys need to become more, and kids, the whole deal, need to become more emotionally available. In my position here at the church, I get to hear from a lot of people. And so I'm going to be a messenger for a second, and the message I want to pass off is this one. I hear from a lot of women that the big thing that they wish from their husbands is that they would be more emotionally kind of talking and sharing and this kind of stuff intimate with them, right? I hear very few people say, I wish my husband would work harder, I wish my husband would, all these kinds of things, but they wish their husband would be connected to them on a spiritual and emotional level. That's what I hear. So don't look at me crazy, I'm just the messenger, right? But this is a real thing here in our space, right? Not out there, it's here in our space. So if you want to work in this area, if you're a guy and you want to say, I want to grow in this idea of becoming kind of more emotionally available within my family and to my kids, here are some ideas I have for how you might do that. Number one is to ask questions of the mom in your life. How are you feeling? That's a good question. How are you doing? How was your day? Right? Ask these questions. Instead of walking in and just kind of going about what you need to get done on your task list, ask the questions. Number two is to tell them how you are feeling. Now, I'm always fascinated by teenage boys because they're one of the most amazing creatures on this earth, in my opinion. And one thing you notice about teenage boys is that when they walk in from school, every mom, I think, asks them, how was their day? And every teenage boy says, good, and then they go somewhere to avoid any more conversation. The issue is when we become out of those teenage boys and into grown men, good is not an acceptable answer anymore, right? We as men need to learn to use our feeling words, right? Learn to use, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling sad, all these kinds of things. Number three, to do one of the most manly things you could possibly do, which is ask for forgiveness. And the reason why that's one of the most manly things you could possibly do is because you have to have the courage to say, I'm going to be okay if I admit that I did something wrong. And so it's actually a very, very manly event to say, I'm going to be okay, now I'm going to go ask for forgiveness. That's a manly thing to do. Number four is to cry. That's enough said about that one. Number five is currently is happening, and I know COVID is a thing, and people are concerned with different things, whatever, but currently, right through that wall, a bunch of guys are trying to meet in a Sunday school class, and the idea there is for them to get together and share openly and authentically and honestly about their life in a way that is going to help them in their marriages and in their parenting and these kinds of things. And so if you want to be part of that, I'd encourage you to do that. Let me just speak from the heart here for a second. I don't get, there's a cultural narrative that says guys are simple and guys are dumb. Right? Guys are simple and guys are dumb. They don't have time or space in their brains or hearts or something for emotional availability. I think that is 100% of Satan. And I don't usually speak this strongly about something, but this is really important to me because I feel like what our church and what our families and what our culture needs. And if you watch kids out of certain families and you watch how they grow up, you can see in some instances where the dads were emotionally available to help parent those kids and where they weren't. And so what our church and our culture and our families need is guys that are emotionally available. I think that would be a huge gift to the wife or mom or whoever in your life. That's number one. Okay, number two, how do we support the moms in our lives? Is that we become intentional. We are intentional in how we go about our life with them. If you're going to support the moms in your life, you need to do more than just be compelled by the cultural situations, such as Mother's Day or their birthday or Valentine's Day, to use those as the spaces where we go out of our way to support and encourage the moms in our life. They need more than that. They deserve more than that. And so, check this out. This is, I don't know if you've heard this before, but this to me is a very, very fascinating story in the Bible. So, you all recall Jesus. He is the one who was both brave and emotionally available. And what Jesus did is he went to the cross as kind of part of his life's mission, right? Was to go and to die for the forgiveness of sins of you and I so we can be kind of enter into God's presence. And so as guys, we all tend to want a mission, like we want a purpose and we want a task to go forward, and here's a big thing, here's a big goal that we want to be part of. That's what a lot of guys want. But Jesus, this brave one, who was right in the middle of his mission, of dying on the cross, there's this blurb in John 19 about what happens when he's on the cross. So I'm going to read a couple of verses from John 19, verses 26 and 27. It says this. So Jesus is, you got to have the picture in your head, right? He's hanging on, like literally hanging on the cross, the nails, the blood, the whole deal, hanging on the cross. And he says, this happens. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved, we assume that's John, disciple John, standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. So here's what's happening in that situation. Jesus is doing his life's purpose, his mission, right? Like he's busy to be about his Father's business, which is that he's going to go and die on the cross for the forgiveness of sins. And right smack dab in the midst of that, when the burden of the world's sins, of your sins, my sins, are on his shoulders, right in the midst of all of that, he pauses long enough to ensure that his mama is taken care of. He pauses to ensure that his mama is taken care of. And remember her, Mary, it might be helpful at this moment to realize that she is one who endured kind of a life of this cultural thought that maybe she had this child out of wedlock, right? Because she knew what happened, but she couldn't prove that to anybody else in her town. She took that 90-mile donkey ride down, like right before he's born, as a 13-year-old girl or so. And then she moved all over the place just to make sure that the future king of the universe wasn't going to be, run into issues to Egypt and back and all this kind of thing. She did all that kind of stuff. And so there on the cross, Jesus is saying, I have this important mission that I'm a part of. And so, but right in the midst of that, I'm going to ensure that my mom is taken care of. He was intentional. And so for any of us who say something like, I want to, I have the intention, I desire to do more for my wife or for my mom or for some, of the women in my life, but I'm just so busy, work has been hectic, all this kind of stuff. Like if that's what's in your mind, you have to reflect on Jesus. Like nobody here is busier and has more on their shoulders than he had at that moment, right? None of us are. And so, what's this mean? I think it means we need to do something like regularly take time to care for and support and be intentional about loving and cherishing and caring for the women, moms, and so on in our lives. Don't just honor her when you would be culturally embarrassed if you didn't, right? Here are some ideas from me on how to kind of be more intentional in our care for moms. Number one, this is a practice that I've been taken to recently just to help force me to do the things that I know that I want to do that I don't make a habit of yet. And so it's to set alarms on your calendar or phone or something to prompt you to do something special for the wife or mom or somebody in your life. And so you just put a reminder that says, text wife or call mom or whatever it might be, get a present, do something for somebody, right? It just forces you to see, that alarm come up or whatever to make that happen. Number two is to pray for your mom. It's interesting to think, that how do we care for these moms who are, in my opinion, from observation, feeling so overwhelmed because there's always so much more they can be doing. I don't know what's better than to say, God has infinite resources for their good, and I'm going to ask God, who has infinite resources, to take some of those infinite resources and help that mom that's in my life. Number three, text, write notes, send emails to encourage the moms you know. Kind of enough said about that. Number four, and I think this is important, is to bring up areas of concern or growth related to marriage, kids, family, these kinds of things. And so you might think, well, how would I be supporting them by bringing up things that are, possible conflict, possible landmines? How would that be supporting of somebody? But I think it's supportive in exactly the idea that you're going to kind of, instead of waiting until something gets to a critical crisis and have it blow out of proportion, you're going to say, I value our marriage, I value our family, I value these kids, I value whatever so much that I want to talk about this before it becomes a bigger issue. And so to bring up areas of concern is a loving, good thing to do because it's going to show that you want to be involved in that stuff and you're not going to just say, I'll handle the money and make sure everything's fixed, and you, spouse, can take care of all the emotional pieces. Lastly, I think I always think about us this way, that all of y'all here, if you're part of the Kish family, then we all are part of two families. So we have kind of whoever we live with and whoever we're related to and all that kind of stuff. And then we also have this big thing called the church family. And as part of the church family, there are some people who maybe don't have such a, like I said at the beginning, they don't have such a healthy place as a mom in their situation. And so maybe this is the first year without their physical mom, or maybe this is, they wish and have always wanted to have a mom, or maybe they're like more of like a mentor mom kind of a situation. And so we want to support the moms, not just, the physical ones that are tied to me, but also some others that are on the peripheral. And so those are my two thoughts for how we can support moms in our lives. So again, if you're a mom, I didn't notice anybody snoring. It actually looked like you were more attentive, or as attentive, I should say, as usual. So thank you for that. But we'll see how the guys do on Father's Day. Two things. We can be emotionally available and we can be attentional. And so I really hope that Mother's Day is a healthy and a fun experience for y'all and for all the guys and whoever watching online, that kind of thing. Let's work together to support those moms. I'd like to close. This is kind of a celebratory situation, and so we do want to encourage and love on the moms around here. And I'd like to close by sharing some answers. So Laura, the children's ministry director, I asked her to give 3 questions to a bunch of the kids from our church. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to share their responses. They're both funny and insightful and interesting. So I thought we'd end on that note, and then I'll pray. So here are the 3 questions we asked with some selected responses from the kids here at Kish. All right. Feel free to laugh, because I hope you do, because it's funny to me. All right. So what's your favorite thing about your mom? Answer number 1 is she makes me cereal, which again I thought was great because my mother-in-law is also getting me cereal, so we're loving cereal around here. Number 2, she loves me. Number 3, she likes my cooking, which I thought, like, props to that kid, Answer number 4 is blue. So favorite thing about your mom, the answer is blue. They're age 3, so we'll give them a pass, I don't know what's happening there, but blue. Number 5, she's silly. She tells me jokes. Number 6 is interesting. It says, she is sometimes nice. So favorite thing about mom, sometimes she's nice. So whoever that is, good job on sometimes being nice. Number 7, she is strict, and that helps me get things done. So I don't know what's happening with that kid, but they're happy that the mom's strict. So if you're a mom here, you can use that in your arsenal. And number 8, she is kind. Question number 2 is this: what's the most important thing your mom taught you? Most important thing mom taught me. So answer number 1 is about money. About the Bible, there's 3 of those responses. How to read and write. This next one I thought was pretty important. Mom potty trained me. And if you think about it, it's really a critical thing, because if nobody here was potty trained, we'd have a lot bigger issues, than we do. So that's good. Answer number 5, to treat others how you want to be treated. And in parentheses, I'm still working on that. So it's like another honest kid. I like that. About Jesus, to be kind. Most important thing your mom taught me how to ride my hoverboard. So I don't know what any other moms are out there doing, but if you want to really up your game, get a hoverboard and teach a kid how to do it. Then they'll be real impressed. And lastly, the last question is, if your mom had $1 million, what would she do with it? So if mom has $1 million, what would she do with it? Answer number 1 is she would buy something. Answer number 2 is similar. She would buy something for herself, which I thought was great. Answer number 3 is she would buy toys. I'm assuming the toys wouldn't be for herself, so we're getting confusing here. Answer number 4, she and Dad would go on a trip. Notice that it's very precise. She and Dad are going on the trip. There's no mention of any kids on that trip. Number 5, she would buy a 4-door Jeep. She had $1 million, 4-door Jeep. Number 6, she would go online shopping. Number 7, she would finish paying off our house, which I think is really funny because it's like, that's $1 million, So she'd finish paying off the house. Maybe save it, ? So it's like they don't want that to happen, but maybe she would do that. That'd be kind of annoying. Number 9, she would save it for our college fund. So I don't know, these are elementary school kids. I don't know who's saying that. And then lastly, if your mom had $1 million, what would she do? she would probably go buy a bunch of makeup. So, again, we love these kids. So, all right, let's pray, and we'll close up. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the moms that are here. I thank you for this whole concept that you've created called motherhood, that you created us to be different, male and female, and that gives us the opportunity to show off different aspects of what it means to have a healthy life, and that the moms can show off, oftentimes like the sense of nurture, the sense of just tremendous sacrificial love for their kids. And I just pray that you would help us as a church, help us within our families, within our dynamics, especially help us guys to be able to support moms in a way that really do honor them and glorify you, that we could be Christ-like in our intentionality, and that we can work on removing the kind of cultural narrative that says that we, as guys are okay as long as we're, working hard and providing money, and that's all we have to do. But that we would open up this idea of becoming more and more emotionally intimate as we become more and more Christ-like in our lives. I pray that you would just work in our church family and support, especially those moms that are around that are or might have a difficult day for some reason. I just pray that you'd help us to notice and to love them as well for your glory. I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.